preached in them. I've certainly been to a service of them. And many of our churches follow that traditional Presbyterian four-hymn sandwich with our 4 hymns, 2 readings, 2 prayers, and address. Although we have cut them short lately in a bid to help with the coronavirus. It's interesting that those things we hold dear as non-subscribers, our personal judgment and faith guided by reason, appear in all our churches. They're things that sometimes, again, we take for granted, but that right to be able to have a discussion about what is said from the pulpit, or to have your own view, is something that can never be taken away from us. Many of our congregations, as I say, and we have 32 across the island of Ireland, follow that 4-hymn sandwich. Ballyclare, Banbridge, Castle, Comber, Glenarm, Grey Newtonards and Newry. But we have some very different models within our church, or within our denomination. For anyone who hasn't been to Ballyhamlin in the Ards Peninsula, it's a lovely building, but they have no running water, no electric, a chemical toilet, and electricity is by a generator. And you know it's time for the sermon time when the lights start flickering because we're about to run out of fuel. And yet, if you go at harvest or Christmas, as they say in this part of the world, they produce one of the best spreads I have ever seen, even with no kitchen facilities. Their apple creams are to be. You never come out hungry, and in the middle of the service, if you feel hungry, you just walk to the back of the church, lift a sandwich and a cup of tea, and come back to your pew. Isn't that great? Probably can't do it now at COVID, but all other times. Our neighbouring church, of course, at First Church, has a great musical offering, like All Souls. But another thing we should never take for granted and provides a wonderful diversity is the use of a choir. In All Souls and First Church, we're lucky we have such good choirs. Many of our churches can't sustain a choir, and music really adds to our worship. Mount Pottinger, which is again probably one of our smallest congregations, I've preached to 2 people, a full service on some Sundays. But one of the interesting features about Mount Pottinger was their organist, the late Hugh Crawford, used to have us sing the Lord's Prayer, which is a really interesting thing to do. Cork congregation, I haven't been to a Sunday service, but they do a lovely thing within the Unitarian Church, which is the Candles of Concern. And members of the congregation can come up and light a candle for a concern they have. Some may speak about what that concern is, others may be an unseen concern or unspoken. But it's a very moving part of the service. Dromore have a lovely tradition of singing a vesper at the end, one which I've sung at times. May God's blessings surround you each day. Our Dunmurry congregation have a very different way of serving communion, in that the tables and benches are laid out in the aisles, and those taking part serve each other. A very old tradition within the Presbyterian Church. In Hollywood, they stand for the first prayer and Lord's Prayer like ourselves here in All Souls. They also have a sung Amen at the end of the benediction. Many times I've been called out when I forget and say Amen, and then the organ strikes up the organ, and that's me told off. Kalinchi, well, they're just a lovely group of people, just like ourselves here, and all souls. And the one thing which they really miss, I know speaking to them, is like ourselves and all souls, the cup of tea at the end, which allows a chance to discuss the sermon or to catch up in local news, I maybe call it. I wouldn't dare say gossip, but local news maybe is it. Our congregation in Larne is probably one of the biggest diversities you will ever come across in any of our churches. The congregation is asked to stand as it is put. The Holy Scriptures are brought in ahead of the minister and placed on the pulpit. After each hymn, an Amen is sung. And at the end of the service, the Scriptures are carried out ahead of the minister. Our Mora congregation sing their hymns without musical accompaniment. They don't have an organ, which is also a lovely tradition to listen to. In Cumber and Monterey, you're escorted to the pulpit. The minister is escorted to the pulpit by an elder, preceded by the choir. Monterey is very odd in that it has 3 entrances in because of its T-shape, so you make your way to the roadside to be able to catch everyone. Redeemin has you up at 10 o'clock in the morning. Really? 10 in the morning? Rivara is one of our hidden gems. It's small in number, but follows the usual difference. They don't have a running water or a loo either, but they do have mains electricity, which helps for heat. So remember that if you ever visit any of these churches that don't have a loo, tinkle before you go. There are other churches, as I say, that kind of follow the 4-hymn sandwich. But our diversity in location is as diverse as our presbyteries and the people within it. Our presbyteries aren't geographical either. But then, when we look at the ministry of Jesus, he didn't surround himself with the same people. He had a diverse range of people. Indeed, I would say, good people whom the religious people of the day would look up to may not have been the people that Jesus would have surrounded himself. And we have diversity within the hymns we use and the hymn books that we use. Many use our hymn book of faith and freedom. Indeed, it caused a dispute many years ago with a donation to the denomination regarding the use of hymn books, but that's another story. But I believe a diverse group of people in a church, in any community, is a good thing.